Hello, this is Will. I'm a real werewolf. Please like and subscribe to this channel if you would, or video or whatever. I've been asked to stop swearing by Louis, so as a favour, I'm going to stop swearing in this bit. Hello, this is Will the Werewolf. This is chapter 21. I'm telling my stories of my life. This is me working for the government. Please subscribe to this channel and like the video. That would be very nice of you, or otherwise I'll find you and kill you. Just joking, I haven't got time to kill everybody. This story is me working for the government, and one of the jobs I did. It's a very exciting job. You can get more information about me on www.werewolf.host apparently. I am a real werewolf, and this is my story. So often I'd be taken in to interrogate people for information that were very good at not giving information. Normally a werewolf could get the information. So anyway, we're going to go into it now. If it sounds like I've written this down, it's because I've written it down. Also, I've taken I haven't taken, but they've taken the disguise off the voice because apparently no one could understand what I was saying. So good luck with my accent as well, because I'm from northern bloody England. Anyway, right. They swung out into the busy streets and the screaming horns of the trafficking cabal. We flew through the noisy city in convoy, joined by two slick black SUVs with more special army soldiers in both of them. I think that's what the SAS are called, isn't it? Isn't that the extras thing? Yeah. One behind and one in front of the van. I loved the special army soldiers. They often had bigger egos than me, and when faced with something like me, they could not cope. My training in Hereford meant that they all knew me and all hated me, but in a very respectful manner. As the world's elite force, they were used to being the most dangerous things about normally. Sadly, when I was in the area, they weren't. They were not even a close second. We drove for some time in silence to get to some base or place or wherever to meet the chief and to interrogate this great leader of the insurgents, whatever one of those is. I sat back, sensing and drinking in the sensations offered by the city. Each place in the world smelled and felt different, and my senses, as evolved as they were, added colours, highlights, textures and details that an average person could never experience. My Posit Fenrir was very bored. Now my Posit Fenrir is my wolf soul. He's separate to me. He looks like a wolf, and he wanders around me, and when I want to become a werewolf, we join together and we form a wolf or a werewolf. Read and listen more about him if you want, and other things. Anyway, losing my thread here. My Posit Fenrir was really bored. He was pacing up and down in the back of the van, fed up with the constant travelling and the expectations that my new owners placed on me. As the journey time grew, I also got bored, and I eventually lay my head back and listened to my music, staring directly into the rearview mirror that reflected the image of the driver's shaded eyes. His awareness constantly flicked to my stare. Even covered in sunglasses, I could feel the discomfort. I was a beast, so I would act like one. In truth, I was a bullying dickhead, but you know, when the shoe fits, you should wear it, and be proud of the label, unless the label says Gola. Although, I reckon I could make them cool. The situation that was being brought into was the usual. They tended to bring me in when things were not going their way. Normally it was for someone that they had tried all the usual processes with. They had done all their, thing to try and extract the information required. It was always incredible to me that I would be called in because I knew what those interrogated had to go through before they met me. If they could get through that, then they were very tough cookies. I mean, modern drugs and modern techniques are really hard to beat. But if they were in a rush and or those techniques had not succeeded, they always had the option of me. The money that I was paid for these little excursions was good, and I would spend a few days off in Dubai on my way home. A werewolf in the desert is a strange place for me, but it had its distractions and advantages. This time I would be there for the full moon. I would be in the desert on the full moon. That was going to be wild. We drove through 3 checkpoints where the dicks that were driving me were asked for IDs by the dicks on security, but also the dicks registered my presence that were there on security, but they never asked my dicks for my IDs or even spoke to me for my ID. I just call every kind of CIA agent, army person, anything. They're all the same. They all look like dicks. All part of the deal, apparently. Simple men stay scared if they never get to know you, so they were told not to bother the weirdo. If they spoke to me or got to know me slightly, they might think I was a normal human being, and that would be bad, apparently. So I was told to stay quiet and look mean. I could do the quiet bit, but I was always look good, so I was not great at the looking mean bit. The van ran through the gate of the compound and pulled up outside the big concrete blocky building in a shower of dust and gravel. The dicks got out of the van and I was released from my air-conditioned prison into the hot noonday sun. The chief, who is now my appropriately named handler, was waiting on the steps of the entrance, and he walked out and greeted me. Not a friendly greeting, just a greeting. He shook my hand. "Welcome, Fen. We need some of your special expertise here today. This guy is a real hard ass." I smiled and nodded, but did not speak, and as he turned to walk back into the building, I followed him a pace or two behind, not with any kind of deference for him, but just so that I did not have to get involved in that small talk kind of shit. I mean, what do you talk about in Kabul? The weather? I mean, it's hot. That's it, it's hot. I felt eyes on me in the compound and located 3 snipers with large caliber rifles that were sighted on me. Fenrir in my posit laughed in my head. "They are a little insecure in this relationship, huh?" he sent. It was also always reassuring that they had the sniper thing. I often wondered if it was for the benefit of the troops in the compound to make me out to be this dangerous individual. I hope not. I hope it was all there because actually I was dangerous, hopefully. The double front doors of the building swished apart, and the coolness of the air-conditioned building was welcome after only a few minutes in the sun. We passed on through an empty reception and walked through what would normally be a really busy space. I could see by the desk's contents and the smells that hung in the air, the still boiled air, that this place had housed about 30 sweaty people just a few minutes ago. These offices had obviously been cleared not for my benefit, but maybe for the benefit of the usual incumbents. Or maybe I was a secret that they did not want to share, I don't know. But I was like the Queen in a way. Yeah, the Queen, you know, the commonly held theory that the Queen must think that the world smells like fresh paint, because wherever she goes it has just been painted. Well, it was not fresh paint for me, it was that everywhere I went was empty, even though I could sense that this was normally not the case. I was led to an interrogation room at the back of the building. All the CCTV cameras were off and covered by bags. A side door to the room was opened, and instantly inside was a slightly bloody man sat across from 2 soldiers who stood before him with really big guns. He looked like and was dressed like a well-off local man. He was maybe early 40s in age with a very bad body odour. Looking at the soldiers, I was always amused by the level of overkill in these situations. 2 big, body-armoured American Marines were definitely not needed for this. You can tell American Marines, you just can. They weirdly had British-issue SA-80s in their hands. What did they think he was? A werewolf? The man was shackled to a table by his wrists. All the furniture in the room was metal and bolted to the ground as usual. He looked me up and down and nodded at the chief and said in excellent Queen's English, "Ah, I see we have our next course. We have a real interrogator maybe, unlike the last fool." I loved his bravado. The chief smiled at the man and offered his hand to be shaken by the shackled hands of the prisoner. "Hi, I'm the chief. I'm the guy they bring in when someone is a hard nut to crack. This man is Will, and he's the nutcracker." The man laughed in response. "Very frightening. Some middle-class, spoiled ex-special forces torturer. I think that we should be okay, as I've told the others. I have no valuable information to give you, so waste your time. Have a good day, and it was nice to meet you." He smiled. I really liked him. He had a charisma and a kind of, confidence that was seldom seen. The chief nodded at him and let out a sigh. "Well, we'll see about that." And then he turned, nodded at me, and went to leave the room. He stopped briefly at the door to say a few words loud enough so that they were audible to all. Will, make him want to talk. Maybe you can introduce yourself in your natural aspect. Oh, and please try and keep this one alive and in a state where he can talk. Please. We must learn what he knows." He then smiled at me and winked, and then he winked at the prisoner while tipping his cap. "Good luck, Abdul," he said, and turned to whistle a few bars of some country music song I sort of half recognised. He left the room and the 2 guards followed him out down the corridor. The door had been locked as they left, leaving me in there with the charming terrorist. The man stared now. He seemed incredibly interested in what I would do. "So, Will, what is the next step?" he asked. "Do you beat me up or something? I'm always interested in new techniques." I ignored him and just started to get undressed, slowly unbuttoning my shirt and keeping eye contact with him and having a lovely smile on my face. "Ah," he said, "you mean to sodomize me and break me by fucking me? I went to public school, my friend. I have a passion for rough man sex. I only ask that you spit a little so it's not too bloody for me." He laughed. I smiled at him in response, but just removed my trousers and my underpants. Eventually I stood before him naked. I knew even as a normal man I was built in very, an impressive manner, but what would happen next would be the fun bit. I looked over at my posse. He sat in the corner, and I nodded to him. We flowed into each other and I became the beast. My body grew and I ducked my head as it touched the ceiling. My outstretched arms reached either wall and the black fur of my pelt absorbed the light. My eyes flashed and I roared a guttural roar that made the man sit back in his chair and grip onto the very edge of the table. In a heartfelt response, he started a haunting, sibilant scream. It came from his deepest, darkest place. His entire body was building it into a crescendo of sorts. It was pleasing, and it took some time, but the man eventually went silent. He was now exhausted and spent, staring silently in disbelief at what he saw. Tears were in his eyes, terror issuing from his very scared little terrorist body. His system had reacted badly to the experience. Every bit of the monkey DNA in him tried to crawl away from me, and he cringed and shrunk back into the steel chair. I walked to the table, my bestial head lowering down to his, and I reached out and touched his scalp with a clawed hand. He recoiled. Well, he tried to recoil, closing his eyes and mumbling a prayer in a language I didn't recognise. I held his head so that he faced me, and I sniffed and growled with my nose, gently touching his face as he closed his eyes. It was as though he thought that if he could not see me, that I could not be there. Such a stupid thing to do, and so many fucking people do it. He had shat and pissed himself, again, a common reaction, his body emptying its digestive and urinary tracts of anything that it did not need at this moment. He shivered and moaned. It would be some time before this oh-so-brave man would be able to make sense again to anyone. He never had and could never have expected to meet something like me. This was much more than any person could deal with, and he was already broken. It had been a minute's work for me, and it had just been what was needed. I let the deposit bleed from me as I renewed my human form again. I stood before the man. I smiled at him once more, arms outspread, presenting myself to him as the mere mortal. The man's head was dropped, and he was crying into his hands. A pool of tears formed on the table. I slowly put my clothes back on, keeping an eye on him. He sniffed and looked up. What are you?" he asked. So I started bullshitting. "I'm a demon, my friend. The God you hold in such high esteem has sold you out to the infidel. You have displeased him. So you are here in your own little hell. There are men who are going to come in here after I have left. You will speak to those men and you will give them the information that they seek. If you do this to an acceptable standard, then my friend, you may get saved. If not, you and your family will be mine. I will kill all you love, then I will devour their souls and they will be tortured for all time. Life sometimes sucks. Not the best ending." It was a brazen nonsense to tell him, but he seemed to genuinely believe what I was saying, and why would he not? A pitch-black dog demon had just come forth and shown itself to him. What have I done to displease my God so much?" he asked. Why would he send you to do this? Does he not believe in the mother's cause?" he asked. I could not think of a reply, to be honest. I was not really bothered to explore the story any further, but I felt I had to say something. So I said, "No idea. I just follow orders." It was a shit but truthful reply. I slowly got redressed before turning towards him with a vicious smile. "Do you understand?" I asked. He nodded at me open-mouthed, eyes still glistening. I smiled and patted him on the head. I gave him a final wink, trying to be as cool as the chief, then knocked on the door. Locks opened, and I was greeted by the smiling chief. He raised his eyebrows. "A new record, Will," he whispered. I returned a smile and nodded. I shook his proffered hand and made my way back to the front door. My posit followed in tow. On my way out, I passed 2 interrogators as they made their way to the room in which I'd just been. They maintained like cool exteriors, but the stress poured from their respective bodies on seeing me. They had heard the noises from the room and had obviously knew what I was, and they did not like that one bit. I smiled and nodded at them. They gave no response. You know, that's I suppose it was per their orders. It was a little rude, though. I thought, it was rude as I'd done their job for them, really.